Benjamin Franklin, who said it is better that 100 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. You've taken the Otto von Bismarck approach of it is better that 10 innocent people suffer than one guilty person escape.
No.
Yeah. Well, okay, you have.
No,
right?
I
so
haven't.
No, stop. You don't know anything about these January 6 cases. You don't know why these people are in jail. You don't know that a man is in Brooklyn right now for 3 years without charge or trial. And when Donald Trump says these people have been held for too long, you say, no, Trump is wrong. Keep them locked up. That's fucking fascist. Dude, you've been sitting here with no knowledge of the specifics of some of these cases. There is a man in Brooklyn right now. I'm going to say it again. No charges whatsoever brought. He's been in jail for 3 fucking years. For you to sit there and say it is good that he remains locked up is fascism. That is saying the hierarchical system of the courts and the government is just, and the process is all that matters. And I am saying perhaps 3 years is enough. Because I actually have moral logic and an understanding of these cases. Hence, my position on January 6th has always been the people who have attacked police must go to prison. But 3 years is a fucking long time for assault on an officer. We have seen people on the far left, notably when they were firebombing shit all across Minnesota, 33 people murdered. And how many criminal charges do we get for this? When they firebombed a police station and forced the police to evacuate. On May 29th, 2020, when thousands of far leftists firebombed the White House grounds and set fire to St. John's Church and injured 100 police officers, how many fucking people went to prison for 3 years? How many of them who never showed up on that day are in prison for 20 years? Enrique Tarrio wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. And you are saying that man who his only crime was, quote, don't leave. That's his only crime. You think he should be in prison for 20 years because you're a fascist. You don't care what the facts are. You don't care if this is unjust. You only care that the machine state has decreed you are not to be locked up. And this is the problem I have with the left. They don't know the facts. They don't care about the facts. They view morality as a blanket government stroke of the pen. And every person, regardless of their crime, should be in prison for decades. I reject it outright. The people who fought cops should go to prison. They did. It's been 3 years. But when you've got people who are on misdemeanor charges for having walked into a building at 4 p.m. after the riot, and I know some of these people, they walked into a building for 2 minutes and walked out, and they got 18 months for that. I don't see you defending the innocent people who walked onto a public grass at a public building after a riot had been completed. You don't know. You don't care. You've taken a tribal position and people are suffering because of it. Now you say that Donald Trump saying the injustice that we've seen warrants commutation or pardons. You say that means he's advocating for violence. This is the ultimate problem. Then you cite a press release from Maryland saying, but the right's more violent. There is a distinction between a white supremacist as a right-wing group and a run-of-the-mill Christian conservative who showed up on that day not to protest. Let's talk about Brandon Strzok. He never went in the building. He was on the other side of the building. There was a permitted protest. He walked up the stairs and he was yelling. They put this guy in prison. There is Owen Schroyer, who was at a permitted rally, who was yelling death to communists. They put him in prison and specifically cited his speech. My dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's fine. I get it. We try to be polite. We try to be nice. But there are so many young liberals who sit here and say, the corporate press told me that these people are bad and the machine state government has decreed it by pen. So I don't care what crime they committed. I don't care what the jury said. I don't care who was on the jury. Enrique Tarrio, who was not there, should be in prison for 2 decades. Tell me this now. Why is Enrique Tarrio in prison?
Yeah, so they uncovered with him his plot to overthrow the government.
Enrique Tarrio?
Yeah, and his organization.
What plot? Who's they? Give me some
prosecutors.
Give me some fucking data. Stop squinting at me and saying the prosecutors did a thing. You didn't know. You didn't read it. You didn't read the court papers. All you know is the fascist machine state told you he should be in prison, and you're saying yes to them. Tell me why. Give me the data.
I understand that laws on the books have been there for a long time that I agree with, that if it's proven that you had a plan and you wanted to act on it, and then days after.
What's the proof?
The proof is
say the proof.
By prosecutors.
Say it.
Communications between.
What communications? What did he say? What did he do?
Is this serious?
Are you going to tell me why you think Enrique Tarrio should be in prison for 20 years, or are you going to say the government decreed it?
I just explained to you.
So the government said so. Is that it?
It's usually law enforcement, which I guess is part of the government.
Government said so?
Yep.
Law enforcement
that uncovers evidence of communications, a memo that he crafted and sent to his organization.
Saying what?
That detailed each institution of government that they were going to try to overthrow. Then just days later, his organization is at the Capitol.
I don't think we can even pull up Enrique Tarrio.
I'm not quite sure that there's any evidence of that sort.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this. The idea that Enrique Tarrio crafted a memo outlining, or they 3 months featured witness evidence featured at Tarrio and co-defense included videos, thousands of messages in encrypted chat groups, as well as a public message on Parler. On or before January 6th, Tarrio convened a Ministry of Self-Defense to coordinate Proud Boys' leadership on January 6th. The chat showed that Tarrio, stationed in Baltimore, encouraged the Proud Boys as they attacked the Capitol. Let's figure out what that encouragement was. Are they going to actually say in the article? So here's a citation. Proud Boy and 3 other members of the far-right groups were convicted Thursday in a plot to attack the Capitol. A jury in Washington, D.C. found Tarrio and 3 lieutenants guilty of seditious conspiracy after hearing dozens of witnesses. Jurors cleared a 5th defendant, Dominic Pizzola, on a citizen charge, and a significant milestone of the Justice Department, which is now secured a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting. Wikipedia asserts that they did this, but there's actually nothing in the news article that actually states that is true. Well, now we got a problem. Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source. Let's see. There it is. They introduced evidence that Tarrio discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings in a scheme they called 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. In a message, he said, make no mistake, we did this, do what must be done, and he directed the Proud Boys to do it again. So the question then becomes, in the bigger picture...
So are you going to at all acknowledge that you just blew up over something that I was absolutely citing fairly?
I don't think you cited it fairly.
I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow a government. That's kind of
that's a very loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
Y'all don't seem to be that informed.
Wait, look, respectfully, I cover a lot of protests and riots. A lot of people try to protest and riot and occupy government buildings. Do you think that qualifies as trying to, overthrow your government?
No.
Okay, good. So, I mean...
but if they had a plan to take control of the government, which was this one...
If this was an actual plan, this was the leastly poorly, most
over the government?
ridiculous plan ever. They went after people for having Lego sets of the Capitol. Yeah. I mean, the level of political prosecution here... Would you even admit that there was some level of politics when it came to the prosecution of the J6ers? Would you say politics played a role in this?
Engaging with this as thoughtfully as possible, not trying to grandstand. Of course, often, for very justifiable reasons, prosecutors will try to make an example of someone who, for example, tried to overthrow the government to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. I see why such a thing,
personally, I reject
categorized as sedition,
to overthrow the government,
would be uniquely bad to prosecutors. And political in that this all involved politics, right? And thus...
I'm sorry, I have to say this. Sent. The Wikipedia article making those claims is not citing any actual proof that they said those things.
Because we're harping on these pardons. Pardons are obviously an interesting political, constitutional quirk that presidents are able to do that. It really does undermine the law in our country. But Biden's getting a lot of pushback for clemency that he granted for the Cash for Kids judge who was responsible for sending something like 2,000 children into a Pennsylvania jail, a private prison that he was getting kickbacks for. Do you think that was worse than any pardon Donald Trump could give to any January 6th rioter?
What?
Have you heard of this judge that Joe Biden granted clemency for? A judge who was responsible for sending thousands of teenagers to prison for, otherwise misdemeanor charges while he was getting kickbacks for. Joe Biden was getting a lot of pushback for this because
I've been agreeing with a lot.
So have you heard?
I'm not going to make
this guy specifically.
I've heard of that, but I'm not as read in on it as I should be to speak on it. But
I wonder if
I was more focused on just because it was the big story, and I wanted to again advocate principle. His Hunter Biden pardon, which has been the topic of discussion pardon-wise for us mostly.
Yeah, it was funny because you were telling us a little bit pre-show that you actually had a first-hand experience with Hunter Biden. I don't know, can you tell us anything about your experience firsthand with?
Yeah, just at the holiday
party. And the myth, the legend. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew somebody at the White House who invited me to the White House party, the holiday party. Hunter Biden was there. I found it kind of strange.
I feel like
what was it? I'm sorry. What was his reception?
Right, dude. Who cares? There's that saying that if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not conservative when you're old, you have no head. But the interesting thing about it is, like, what we define as conservative or liberal are amorphous, right? So, like, what does it mean to be conservative? Who wants to try and explain what conservative is?
Traditional, hierarchical, individualistic are the general ideals that it trends towards.
What does liberal mean?
like Enlightenment ideas, vaguely, free speech. God.
Then why is it that the colloquial liberal are the authoritarians in this country?
Because they're not liberals. Because Rush Limbaugh in the 90s ruined the word liberal.
So like,
I obviously disagree with that, but
so lockdowns. Let's try lockdowns. We'll start there. Government lockdowns were largely a liberal phenomenon.
well, initially it was right and left.
Initially, it was Trump
supported too
for 2 weeks, and then
It was more than 2 weeks.
no. The initial thing was 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Oh yeah.
And that was Trump who did that. And then it resulted in basically everybody locking down, but it was the right that ultimately started letting up. And so you ended up with vaccine mandates, mask mandates, which shifted largely into a liberal.
Yeah.
That's why I say left instead.
Agreed.
So that became the authoritarian faction. The left adopted that one.
But then, like, what do you say about Trump talking about going after the media outlets he doesn't like, or
Suing them, that's allowed.
whenever he said, "Oh no, I know it's allowed." You agree though that, like, him saying the government, this was a quote on True Social you pulled up, should come down hard on MSNBC.
What's wrong with that?
That's fine to you. That's not authoritarian to me. Whenever
not,
presidents want to wield a governmental power to go after outlets they don't like their coverage of,
But we have laws,
that's pretty
though.
authoritarian.
What do you think about Stephanopoulos defaming Donald
Well,
Trump?
let's not segue off of the question you just asked.
He didn't defame him.
So when
We'll love to talk about that, by the way.
when Trump says there are we have civil liability issues pertaining to defamation and the media, yeah, you sue them. And if the government is an aggrieved party through defamation, then they should sue them.
Yeah, I know y'all
MSN
would be losing your absolute minds if Biden was out saying the media, like Fox News,
I wouldn't be.
criminals.
I assure you a lot of
Trump
Trump supporters would
Fox
be.
News,
100%. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
I
I'm saying
wouldn't be.
That's an authoritarian impulse to want to punish not outlets that I don't even know what the justification would be, but it's all about people who have wronged him. And if you disagree with
Well,
that, I think you're obviously staring in the face
I'm
of
not
facts and
saying
going,
that aggrieved parties should have no recourse, be it the government or otherwise. So if the federal government is lied about by the New York Times,
Do you think Ann Seltzer deserves to be drained of her funds by Donald Trump?
I never said I agree with that.
Right. So he's doing it to.
He's allowed to file a civil lawsuit.
He's allowed legally. I'm saying
Right.
it can
It's a
be,
personal
you can
lawsuit.
act in an authoritarian manner.
Okay. Well, this is very different from like
no,
taking
no.
people's jobs away unless they get a medication.
Well, yeah, those were the individual jobs. The jobs were doing that.
Under government mandate, Biden issued a mandate that a company
He's
with more
never said-
than
yeah, his
companies with more than 100 employees had to do it.
Or
Tried to use
masking.
or
OSHA
else.
to make it happen.
Or masking. It was always an option. You were never forced.
Well,
They
they
tried to use OSHA to make it.
yeah they required that if you had more than 100 employees, you were forced to issue vaccine mandates.
Or masks.
Sure, pick one.
Yeah.
The government forced every company to do this.
Yeah, and the government has all sorts of mandates for safety. And
OSHA has no authority to do anything like that, and the Supreme Court found it. Agreed.
Listen.
You know,
I'm totally
you could
fine if this
disagree
is your
with it.
argument. That's fine.
I'm just saying that-
if you think that filing a defamation lawsuit is comparable to the government mandating
No.
everybody
I'm saying
engage in a
there's
medical
nothing
practice,
more
fine.
authoritarian than saying we should terminate the Constitution because
When did he say that?
Election lies pulled up on True Social. The MSNBC comment he talked about.
We went over this one with
flying
Shank on the
through.
terminate the Constitution, and I'll give.
Yeah, don't defend that. It's just It's just like you don't. The
not an
Constitution
argument.
shouldn't be
He
terminated.
didn't say that.
Pull it up, please. A massive fraud of this type of magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations.
We went over this with Jack, and I know that you guys have a tribal reason why you're going to oppose. You're not.
No.
gonna
I think
engage.
there's just few things that are so succinctly an embodiment of someone's lack of dedication to our Constitution. So
Let me ask you a question.
Him thinking Ann Seltzer.
Let me ask you a question. If I said the overturning of Roe v. Wade allows for women to be put in bonnets and red dresses and forced to be impregnated, am I calling for them to be?
Yeah, you're alluding to that being, yeah.
So when the Democrats literally said that, you
Oh,
were
wait,
saying,
that's the argument?
so you agree that the Democrats want to put women in bonnets?
No, I understand that you can both make an argument that we live in some dystopian reality where this is the case.
So here's my point.
Trump earlier in the
when-
message was talking about overturning the election. He was saying he would be the one by the mechanism of terminating the Constitution.
So this
overturn
is
the election results.
I'd call this the Covington effect. When was that the Covington kids, or the Sandman effect? Trump said, "Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections." I'll give you. We talked with Jenk about this a couple weeks ago.
Please tell me, please.
Yeah.
Are you saying he wasn't obviously saying that we've gone so far because of his lies. You agreed those were lies
What lies?
about the election.
Which ones?
How millions of votes and Dominion was flipping and all these things.
Did Trump explicitly say Dominion flipped votes?
Yes.
Then that's not true. Yeah, that was wrong.
Okay.
Well, there's a difference between being wrong and lying. And I'm not here to assert that I can read anyone's mind.
Okay. But there were times that the people around him heard him say, like, "Can you believe I lost to this guy?"
Who said that? Oh my gosh. I mean, come on, like, dude. You're making a lot of statements of fact, and I'm asking you just be like, hey, like who claimed?
Okay,
Trump
fine.
said,
He accidentally made a bunch of false statements, and it led to
No, he
terrible,
lies.
terrible
I
things.
think Trump lies a lot.
And even if you thought the election was unfair, trying to do the fake elector scheme, all those things, none of it's justifiable. That
This is
so
Scott,
authoritarian.
Scott Adams
it's
calls
so
this
authoritarian.
right. Scott Adams calls this what is it? One screen, two movies effect.
That's Yeah, you're shocking. That's crazy.
I mean,
I don't think we're allowed to. I mean, with the masking, that wasn't an option, though, wasn't it? Just like you had to get the vaccine. I don't remember.
You couldn't even go get food. But in this regard, this is a really, really great example of the one screen, two movies. Now, I have no problem saying I totally understand why you believe what you believe. Right. I also think that this country is deeply pitted against. It's two factions that are deeply pitted against each other that can't actually understand the phenomenon at play. That is, nowhere in that statement did Trump say we must terminate the Constitution. You interpret it as such. That's it.
Yeah, that's
Does it say we must terminate the Constitution?
Bending over backwards way.
Where- does it
well,
say
actually,
that?
the reason that
It's just a different interpretation.
It's
not
not.
crazy.
It's not. You
not
don't say the
crazy
election-
bending over backwards. You're putting the
you don't
context
say
on it.
false statements about the election and then say we should do something that's not constitutional, which is throw an election out months and months after it happened, and then go, by the way,
It was a question. It was phrased as a
No,
question.
hold on. This is actually really simple. In the context you are presenting, Trump is saying, I believe there was a massive fraud against me. The founding fathers would not have wanted this. This fraud they have committed allows for all of the rules to be thrown out. He is not saying we must terminate the Constitution. He's saying Democrats already did.
all right, that you can make that
agree
argument.
that's not an argument I made up. This is literally what conservatives believe.
You're saying that's your interpretation. I'm saying
It's not my interpretation.
Well, then what's your interpretation?
I am telling you there.
What is your interpretation then? Take a stance on it.
Trump issued a statement that all rules and regulations, including those in the Constitution, can be overturned in the event that there is a massive fraud.
Okay, thank you. Well, we agree then. That's crazy and authoritarian. Because he was lying about the fraud, and he's lying about the mechanisms by which you address fraud.
You just reasserted that you can read his mind when Tim was saying no.
Oh, yeah.
Read his
if
mind.
one guy thinks an election was unfair and can't present that in the places where you have to present it to get an election overturned, courts, then yes, I think false statement, whatever, it's ridiculous and it's dangerous is the important point. So I think if we want to go through instances where we feel like either side has done authoritarian things, we could do that. But it's wild that y'all are so willing to speak out about what you perceive to be authoritarianism on the left with no understanding of the chief authoritarian crime you could do is trying to prevent the key part of our democratic process, which is the peaceful transfer of power.
So, the chief authoritarian crime you could do is kill someone without due process, but we won't get into that one tonight.
That was Obama.
That's right.
Yeah. The point here is when we're trying to logically understand what is going on, because clearly it's not so easy to say Trump is evil, Trump is good. There's two different factions in this country. Trump won the popular mandate. Therefore, you could argue, I guess the public thinks Trump is good. In that case, the public interpretation of this in the majority is that Trump wasn't calling for the termination of the Constitution. His faction won the
Almost
majority
every
vote.
person I've talked to doesn't know that.
Doesn't know what? That what he said?
Yeah. No, people don't know that he's threatened media outlets like he has. He's talked about
Threatened him with what? Come on.
calling them criminals would be bad.
Why?
Because fostering an environment where people who, for the singular reason that they speak out against you politically, which they're allowed to do, are criminals. That's the only thing he would cite, is that they've said terrible things about him. And then going further to say the government should get involved in punishing them. And then to show his willingness to, even before he takes office, with him as a much more resourced person, trying to punish ABC, which we could talk about that. That was ridiculous that they decided to bend the knee there. And then Ann Seltzer for doing a poll that was wrong.
But that's a
Polls are
private
wrong.
lawsuit.
And he's doing that for a purpose,
So
which I don't like.
I sued Kamala Harris.
Awesome. I'm saying I don't like whenever presidents wield their official governmental power or
But it's private.
power,
It's not government power.
or their power of their massive megaphone, understanding he's about to have governmental power to threaten people who speak out against him.
There was no guarantee that he was going to have governmental power.
No, he's doing this suit now.
Yeah.
He's doing the ABC, or the
When
ABC was
when it was
before.
when it was going
Then
on.
there's the
But it was
Ann
going on
Seltzer.
prior to him winning, though.
No, Ann Seltzer, he just brought this suit.
He did. I think it's a stupid lawsuit, but it's a private lawsuit, so I don't care.
What you think? Yeah,
I
think
don't-
it's stupid. So I'm not gonna ask you. I was about to ask you.
Like why? Like I don't know. Like Trump could sue whoever he wants. I don't know. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.